Good morning, Tuesday, April 3rd. This is your latest helping of Breakfast Scone. Hope you all had a good one. National championship game last night. We'll get to that. LSU baseball and the Pels back on the floor. Coming up, baseball tonight, Pels tomorrow. A lot to get to here in these next 10 minutes or so. But after one of the most dramatic NCAA tournaments, I guess it was only fitting that we had the most anticlimactic title game maybe in history. If you watched last night, congrats to Jay Wright and Villanova. They get their second title in 3 years. They join Duke and Florida as the only team since '85 to win two titles in 3 years. Of course, both Duke in 91, 92, and then Florida in 06, 07 went back to back. But after Villanova's first title 2 years ago, a game-winning buzzer beater from three to win it is about as dramatic as we've seen in our lifetime, my lifetime, and it would be fitting that they had just a total woodshed beating of Michigan last night, and there was a lot of history made. If you just go through, read ESPN stats and info, I mean, Dante DiVincenzo joins Glenn Rice as the only player with 30 points and 5 3-pointers in the national championship game. Nova had 26 made three-pointers in the Final Four in their two games, the semifinal and the final. That's a record. 26 made threes. Just insane what they were able to do. Nova beat every team in the tournament by at least 10 points. That hasn't happened since North Carolina in 2009. That '09 North Carolina team, you may remember, is the one that beat LSU in the 1-8 game in the second round after LSU beat Butler. That was Trent Johnson's first year. So, man, it was, in a way, it's fun to watch that dominance, but the game itself was certainly not fun to watch last night. But congrats to Villanova. But what is happening, though, is, immediately after a game like that, you see everybody put out their way too early top 25 now for next year. They do it in football, they do it in basketball as well. And yesterday, the Sporting News did that and had LSU preseason number 13 next year. And ESPN put theirs out, and they have LSU preseason number 20 next year, and say that the Tigers could be the surprise team in the entire country. So I mentioned it on the on AFR on Monday, but for those that missed it when we talked about the Sporting News piece, it's validating, right? Because there is an inherent bias, whether you try to have it or not, whether you try to eliminate it as best you can. When you cover a team, when you're a fan of a team, you always think the best for your team, or in certain instances that your team isn't getting the respect they deserve, whatever it may be. I mentioned on the show yesterday, I saw 6 different SEC writers after this basketball season argue that the coach that they cover should have been SEC Coach of the Year, like Quanzo Martin at Missouri. Come on, man. I mean, Missouri was bad last year, but they were also picked to finish middle of the pack in the SEC this year. I mean, Rick Barnes at Tennessee, they were literally picked to finish 13th. Only LSU was picked to finish worse than Tennessee, and Tennessee won the league. So there is no debate, really. And the only other debate could have been Bruce Pearl. But anyway, it's validating because you're inclined to think that your team should get more respect, but it's validating for LSU to see, okay, people outside of Baton Rouge are noticing LSU and saying, yeah, that's a team next year to watch. That's a team next year that should absolutely be in the tournament. So we're talking about it, but so are people outside of Baton Rouge. So college basketball season comes to an end. If you, it's amazing. You have this tournament that had UMBC, the first 16 seed ever to beat a 1. You had Marshall as a 13 seed getting a win in round 1. You had Arizona going down with a thud. You had Kentucky as a 5 seed being the highest ranked seed out of their region to advance, which was the lowest ranked seed ever to advance out of a region, or to the regional semis as the highest seed, if that makes sense. You had this tournament. You had the Loyola storyline, Sister Jean. It's so many upsets and just a lot of history made in this tournament. It was so fun with all the upsets and the madness. And then you get to the title game, and it is an absolute turd. I mean, it was a dud last night. So I'm sure TBS was not thrilled with the way the title game went. But congrats to Jay Wright. He seems, by all accounts, like a good guy. And I don't know his lineage, but you just look at him. You see the olive skin, you see the dark hair, you see the suits, and you got to figure he's a paisan like yours truly. So Wright isn't exactly an Italian name, but maybe it's on his mother's side. But congrats to Villanova and Jay Wright for getting their second title in 3 years. LSU baseball is back on the diamond tonight against Nicholls at Alex Box Stadium, 6:30 first pitch. Weather should be fine today, so I always look at that in midweek games, really any game. I always look, all right, what's the weather going to be today? So are they going to have any issues getting the game in? The odd thing about this, in full disclosure, I love Seth Thibodeau, who's the Nicholls head coach, and this goes back to might have been his first year as the head coach. And on AFR, I book my guests, and I always reach out to a lot of these in-state coaches to get them on the day of the midweek game. And I remember reaching out to Seth Thibodeau, and the first time I called him, I introduced myself, and he went, "Scone man." So clearly he listened to the show, he was a fan. So ever since then, I've kind of been a fan. He's always been so generous with his time to the show. So I pull for Nicholls baseball. I do. Like, if there's ever a midweek game where I don't mind LSU losing, it's when they lose to Nicholls in the midweek. So this, though, doesn't feel like the Nicholls team that's going to get that done. It's a rough year for Nicholls so far. They're just 9-18 on the season right now, and they are struggling on the mound and in the field and at the plate. Nicholls is right now as a team hitting .262. That's not good. And as a collective pitching staff, their ERA is a 5.30. That's typically not going to get it done, even in a midweek when LSU might run out some backups and just try to get through a ball game. But I always go into midweek games thinking, okay, what can LSU accomplish in this game? You know how I feel. It's not so much about the result. I mean, of course, you want to win, but what can they accomplish in this game? And for me, there's a couple of things. Primarily, A.J. Labus gets the start. His ERA is 2.95, and he's been so good. In 21 and a third innings pitched, Labus is 16 strikeouts to just 3 walks. His command has normally been on point. And that's what I want to see. It's most important right now for Labus to continue developing into that consistent fourth starter. Because when you have a fourth starter, and I don't want to sound like a broken record with this, but whenever if you are going to make a run in postseason, at some point, you will need a fourth starter. If you end up in the loser's bracket in the regional, you're going to end up playing a fourth game. Now, hopefully you don't ever end up in a loser's bracket in the regional, but we've seen it happen before. You won't need your fourth starter in super regional, but at the SEC tournament, if you start playing on a Wednesday, by the time you get to Sunday, you'll be on your fourth starter, provided you make it there. And how nice would it be to have, say, A.J. Labus start the SEC championship game? Or if Labus pitched the first game on a Wednesday, then you could set up your rotation for Thursday, you go Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Provided you obviously have to get your double bye and play that far into the weekend. But either way, the point is when you have that fourth starter, it sets you up for success because you don't have to alter your rotation. Of course, we looked at Omaha last year, where Russell Reynolds ended up having to start the first game of the championship series after Eric Walker's injury, because you could have started Gilbert in the fourth game, but instead you had to move Gilbert up, and you were without your third starter. So it was Reynolds. Hey, hold on. All right, now I'm good. It was Reynolds who ended up starting game one of the championship series. So now, just if you think ahead, if LSU were fortunate enough to get there again, you'd have A.J. Labus starting in that situation, provided LSU didn't have to play out of the loser's bracket either way. But so let me see A.J. Labus continue to develop there and continue to get comfortable and continue to dominate in the midweek. And then I'm very curious what Paul Maneri does at third. No surprise here, Nicholls is going to start a lefty. So if Chris Reed starts at third tonight, that's the best indicator that Maneri's just going to go with a lefty-righty platoon with Reed and Slaughter at third. And maybe the next big question of intrigue for this team is what's going to happen when Josh Smith returns. So Josh Smith was on AFR on Monday and said he swung a bat for the first time. Didn't hit a ball, just dry swings, just swung a bat in the training room for the first time since his injury. fielded some grounders, and he's targeting the Tennessee series. The doctors told him not this weekend against A&M, not next week in the midweek, but the following Friday, a week from Friday, against Tennessee. That's the next question of intrigue, is what happens when Josh Smith returns. Does he just go in at short and Hughes goes to the bench? Or does Hughes go to second and Bain goes to first? Or Bain DH? Or does Hughes stay at short, Reed goes to, or Smith goes to third, Reed or Slaughter goes to the bench, or Slaughter goes to first? Point is, there's options, and that's a question Palmineri is going to have to answer and deal with when that time comes. But if you see Reed run out there tonight against the lefty, Slaughter tonight against the lefty, to have the right-handed bat in the line, it's a pretty good indicator of what they're looking to do. To bat Reed against righties and Slaughter against lefties. I'll wait until tomorrow to talk more about the Pelicans. Pelicans Grizzlies tomorrow, huge game. So we'll talk about that tomorrow on the show. But that's just on Morning Scone. That's going to be a huge game for New Orleans with 5 games to go, and you got 2 games against awful teams, and those 2 you got to win, and they're your next 2. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. So that'll do it for us here on Morning Scone. Hope you enjoyed it as always. Please give us comments and ratings, a thumbs up, thumbs down here on the YouTube channel. If you're watching us on Facebook, please comment, like, share us on Facebook. If you're on Twitter, please retweet us. However you found this, just help us spread the word and let people know. And as always, I'm open to suggestions. So please give me comments, give me feedback on how we can make this better. Things that you'd like me to do, the length of it, the topics to talk about. I'm doing this every morning for you. So let me know if you got suggestions on how to make it better. In the meantime, have a great Tuesday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning.